The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Christmas Eve is upon us, but that is no time to take a break. Friends, confidants here on Fantasy NBA Today, we do not take a break. In fact, I'll probably have a very brief mailbag show tomorrow, be my guess. Probably do about a half an hour show instead of the full hour on Christmas Day. You guys are fortunate in this regard that you have a friendly neighborhood Hebrew here hosting your podcast, so I got nothing going on tomorrow. I got nothing going on. Just going to be sitting around and eating Chinese food and watching movies. I know the stereotypes, and they're all completely true. That's what I do, because it's awesome. It's actually, frankly, kind of nice to not be on the road on Christmas because it's crazy out there. Just a bunch of folks all liquored up on eggnog, convincing themselves they can get home safely. And then New Year's Eve, obviously, is a terrifying time to be on the road. And I know they crack down on it. Please, friends, use an Uber or a Lyft or whatever it is, or a Bird. You can scooter yourself to your parties over the next 8 days. Small request. Happy birthday to my wife. Today is the official birthday of Dr. Besbris. That's right, the overachiever of the household. And she's working, not surprisingly. But I don't think she's listening to the podcast either. I would doubt it. Maybe I'll tell her to listen, and then that way she'll know I'm not lying when I say I actually gave a shout-out. You guys can tell her, right? Nah, I think that's probably my responsibility. All right, happy birthday, wife. What do we got going on? Well, we got a chat with Jacob Bikshorn coming up in just a little bit. We've got reverse chronological lightning round because it's Monday. We've got a little bit of news on the week ahead as we sort of game plan over this holiday stretch. And we got to check in on our revenge angles because I've been doing a lot of Excel work over the weekend. Managed to work my way through about 12 days of this stuff. It is thicker than I thought. I was not ready for the number of times that these angles come up. And obviously, this is the time of year where it happens, right? The revenge angles we've been talking about on the sports betting side of things. This is the time of year where a lot of teams are playing each other for a second time, or a couple even getting into the third time. There aren't many of these angles first thing during the season, and there won't be that many by probably next month. But here we are, and we're really right in the teeth of it. So that's all on tap for today's podcast. We got a lot to get over. Wanted to mention on the interview that's got coming up today, we conducted that a few days ago. It was actually before the Bobby Portis injury took place, and also before we got the official 1 month timeline on the Zach LaVine front. So I think there might be a brief mention of that stuff during the podcast, but what you can do, and it's unfortunate that this happened, but I had so many interviews backlogged, I was just crossing my fingers that nothing stupid would happen in Chicago, and of course it did. But what you can do is take a lot of this and just say, okay, well, how does this apply when LaVine and Portis get back? Simple enough. A couple weeks away, everything will be right on the money. But first thing is first. I am Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today, a hoop ball presentation. Of course, all podcasts here on the Hoop Ball Network brought to you by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. This is the perfect time to get some Hawaiian Isles. It's Christmas time. It's the holiday season. What a wonderful gift it would be to give a loved one, or hell, I don't care, give it to a coworker, or give it to somebody you don't like. It doesn't matter. Give it to somebody. The gift of amazing coffee. They're going to end up wanting to get it themselves after you get them a sample pack. But you can do all that at HawaiianIsles.com. If you have any questions for them, at HI Kona Coffee on Twitter. Fantasy nuts over there. As I've said before, you can actually just bug them about fantasy sports if you want. But if you have questions about coffee, you can hit them up there. You can also find their products on Amazon by searching for Hawaiian Isles. You can search for the whole name if you want, Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company, but it'll pop up, and all you got to type is Hawaiian Isles. Reverse chronological lightning round. I think most of you know how this works at this point, but I'll give the 20-second spiel anyway. We go through Sundays, Saturdays, and then if necessary, Fridays box scores, just to give a glance at every team's most recent basketball game. This is what I could probably have called a weekend reset. But for me, I thought, well, I'm so freaking verbose, I might as well just call it reverse chronological lightning round. I get it. I get why you guys called me pedantic in that review. I do. Who calls it reverse chronological lightning round when you could just call it a weekend reset? Either way, I wanted you guys to know how we're doing it. We do it backwards because the most recent game a team plays is the most relevant. So it's not necessarily a full weekend recap. We're not going to go through, I think Atlanta played twice. We're going to go through their most recent one, and we're going to skip over the second most recent one. In general. Atlanta conquered Detroit. That's why I brought them up, because that was the early game on Sunday. Atlanta conquered Detroit. It was a revenge game for the Hawks, and they won it outright as a 10-point underdog. That's pretty cool. Kent Bazemore rumbling along. Vince Carter filling in admirably here for the injured John Collins, who presumably will be back for the next one, but I guess we don't know for sure. Old man Vincent had 18 and 7. What a throwback effort. Jeremy Lin only played 17 minutes, and that's going to be the thing here. When Trae Young is actually not, he was pretty awful, and he still played 31 minutes in this game. It's a tough thing to get on board with, and I know that I've been sort of pushing the Jeremy Lin thing, and because he's such a stat magnet, there's this part of me that's like, look, if you just get him out there for 22 minutes a game, you're in business. Well, that's not always going to be the case, so we need the average to come up a little bit from his 18 and a half, but we only need it to come up by about 20%. Now, let's get him up to 22, 23 minutes, and you got yourself a top 100 guy. As it stands right now, he's just outside of that mark, and so for that reason, he's not a must-own guy. I know. You guys know I love my old guys, but sometimes you have to put a pin in it. Alex Len at 15 and 17. Atlanta went huge in this game to combat the Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond front court, and by all accounts it worked, but he's not going to stick. This was a matchup thing. Dwayne Dedmon will generally be starting at center, especially when John Collins is healthy. The Pistons, on the other hand, are just a no story. They're nothing. Andre Drummond may still be playing through illness. It's tough to tell. Blake Griffin, we're starting to see a little bit of that pullback that we had always sort of figured was going to show up. The question was, how would it hit? Because the popcorn numbers are still colossal. And I've been impressed with the fact that he's been taking it to the hole as often as he has, but his free throw percentage is down. It's at 73 this year after he had worked himself into the mid to high 70s, actually, for the last 2 seasons in a row. 76 and then 78.5 last year. And so that hurts because he gets to the line a lot, especially now this year that he's taking it to the hole so frequently. He's not taking long twos anymore. I know you look at the numbers and it's like, well, he's actually taking more three-pointers this season. Yes, that's true. Each of the last 2 years, he took about 12 two-pointers per game. This year, they're just closer. He's getting closer to the bucket. And that's a good thing because you want field goal percent from a power forward. But the free throw situation, and now that he's getting more of them again, is a problem. He's also an injury risk. I still think this is a sell moment. But, if you're in a points league, he's sort of a different kind of beast. And then the rest of the Pistons are just terrible from a fantasy standpoint. You get past those top 2, and it's a mess. It's a mess. The rest of these guys have empty fantasy stat games. Washington at Indiana. Okay, this is one of the times where I think I'm going to make an exception and not talk about a team's most recent game because the Wizards were coming off of a triple overtime win. But I will talk about Indiana from this one. And my fear here is the Darren Collison stuff, because Tyreek Evans was out. This seemed like an opportunity for Collison to actually do a little bit of stuff. And to be fair, he likely would have played the last 5 to 6 minutes of the ball game if it wasn't a massive blowout. So 22 minutes would have become 27 or 28, but I still want 30. He's not truly in the Thad Marvin border where like it has to be 30 minutes for him to have fantasy value, but it's got to get a lot closer than 27. It's got to be 29, something like that. He's got to be nuzzling up against it because he's just not. The usage this year is just insanely low. He's going all passing. His assist rate this year is, I think, as high as it's been at any point during his career. The steals are up. and then everything else is down. So there's still that room there where you're like, okay, I know this guy can do it, and you're definitely not punting on him. But I gotta see more. It's got to be better. Miles Turner played well. Sabonis, Oladipo, those guys actually held down the fort a little bit. Thad actually had an okay ball game, but he went on a fluffing expedition at one point where he had a layup and he just got his own rebound like 3 times. And so instead of 10 points and 9 rebounds on 5 for 12 shooting, that's what he ended up with. If he just makes the second try on that, then it's 10 points, 7 rebounds, and he's like 5 out of 9 shooting or 5 out of 10. So it would have been a whole lot better percentage-wise. So Thad's been playing well. Nothing changes there. Miami at Orlando. This was a blowout also, but we did learn some stuff on the Heat front. Number one, Hassan Whiteside is back in. And this is what I told you guys about on the podcast, and we all are aware of it. No matter how many times somebody asks me, is Bam Adebayo going to overtake Whiteside? The answer is no. As long as Hassan is healthy, he's a better rim protector. He gets so much flack because he has these disappearing acts. But at the end of the day, he is a more fundamentally sound basketball player than Adebayo. Bam is the more athletic between the two guys. He's running around. He's doing all sorts of weird stuff. But they like what Whiteside brings, particularly with the first unit. They don't want the guy that's just flying around like a lunatic. They want the guy that's a little more principled. So while Whiteside is obviously not the best player in the NBA, he still has a leg up on Bam, and so when he's healthy, he's going to play his 20-some-odd minutes, and he's going to be worth using, provided he could ever make a free throw again in his life. This is the craziest thing that I've seen in like the last 5 years of fantasy sports. This is a guy who, over the last 4 years, basically, had slowly worked himself into a serviceable foul shooter, and this year, he can't make any. And it wasn't even right out of the chute. In fact, you look at the beginning of the season, and it was bad, but it wasn't unusable bad. Something happened. I don't know specifically when. I don't know if it was injury-related, like something got tweaked, but it was right around November 23rd in Chicago. Something broke. Something broke. Because before that, he had a 9 out of 11 game against the San Antonio Spurs. He had a 4 for 4 free throw shooting game. He was like at 60-ish%. And it's just been this crazy drop-off where since that game, November 23rd in Chicago, he's made a grand total, this is makes, by the way, of 7 free throws. He's made 7, and he has missed 32. He is 7 for his last 39 at the free throw line. I have never seen anything like it. I mean, this is putting DeAndre Jordan to shame. 7 for 39. That's sub 20%. Close your eyes at this point. It couldn't get any worse. It legitimately could not get any worse. He's become the worst foul shooter in the NBA, and it's not close. He's killing you in this spot. And I don't know what you can do because everybody's aware of it, so it's not like you're going to be able to move off of the dude. Your only hope is to try to pawn him off to a punt free throw team and ask for something back that maybe they don't need as much. I don't know. I honestly don't know. This is an uncharted territory. But, I mean, if you have him on your team, you sort of still have to trot him out there. I think, honestly, at this point, I'm not sure. He's shooting 16% over the last month at the free throw line. He's crushing you. Your team would be far better off without him on the floor. He's right around number 200 over that stretch. It's crazy. He's unstartable. You can't run that out there when he's missing free throws like that. You just have to hope he never gets fouled. Elsewhere on the Miami Heat, and we'll keep an eye on this thing, but it's killing you. The Dwayne Wade farewell tour continued. He got 12 shots up in 24 minutes. He's just out there chucking away, but he's not a 9-cat guy. Kelly Olynyk played 22 minutes in this game because the last couple of games, James Johnson has actually looked okay. That's really been the key. Olynyk was taking Johnson's minutes, and Johnson was fine the last two. And so they ended up kind of splitting the power forward bucket, which is annoying. But I have a feeling James Johnson is going to go back to stinking again at some point in the not-too-distant future, and then Kelly will get revved back up. So I would sit on Olynyk if you can. I'm not going to panic on this one. Tyler Johnson, he got real hot in this game, and you're rolling with him until the wheels come off there. Justice Winslow also got hot in this game. I know that there are a lot of places that are recommending him as an ad in 9-cat formats. I'm not going that far. I think he's a definite ad in points league formats. But as I've said before, guys don't change overnight. Winslow historically runs very hot and very cold. What you're picking him up for, if you are, is for the rebounds and assists, because you're not going to be counting on the points. A big game here and there does float his value a little bit. He's number 140 over the last month, but he generally doesn't get inside the top 100 for more than a week at a time, because at some point, the percentages are going to weigh him down. Look at career numbers, guys. These things don't change like that. He's a 41% shooter from the field. He's a 66% free throw shooter. Those things even out. They just do. So when he has a really hot game and he shoots 75%, he's got one coming down the pipe where he's going to shoot about 14%. It's just the way it works. Points leagues, though, have at it, man. If you don't care about those percentages, then he's a very useful player. But otherwise, don't get crazy. The one I am a little bit worried about is Derek Jones Jr. It seems a little bit like his minutes were tied to the absence of Justice Winslow, maybe more than we expected or more than we hoped. I think I'd give him another game or two, but he's a guy that could disappear as quickly as he showed up just because he doesn't have much of an offensive game. And so I'm a little bit worried there. Derek Jones Jr., I know he's so fun. He's so fun to watch. He's so cool to watch. Now we lauded him on Friday's show as a guy that could be emerging. Miami just has so many bodies, and he's not at the front of the line. I thought he might have been playing his way towards the front, but it's looking like that might not be the case. But, we'll see. They do a lot of hot hand stuff. Spoelstra likes to ride the hot hand in Miami. Maybe that means more, but when that's the case, that means that a lot of guys are tough to use because of consistency issues. Also, congrats to Wayne Ellington for playing 4 minutes and having usage rate of 0. He did nothing. 4 minutes, 2 personal fouls. Interesting game. He's totally fallen off the radar. The Magic are slumping hard. I know Jonathan Isaac is hard to hold at this point, but you still have to do it. You just have to. They want him playing minutes. They want him doing stuff. They just got smoked in this game, so I'll try not to read too much into it. Phoenix was another team coming off a triple overtime game, although they looked a little bit more like themselves because they got to play a little bit later in the day. A couple extra hours goes a long way. Breaking down the minutes, basically, is the way we want to attack this thing. DeAndre Ayton played really well on that back-to-back, and so he ended up tipping the minute balance back in his favor pretty strongly. Rashawn Holmes had 16 minutes in this game, and he was good with them. 8, 6, and 1. No defensive stats, but 4 for 5 shooting. And I think on most nights he'll get more than that, but when Ayton's playing this well, 26 and 18, 2 steals and 3 blocks, he was the guy keeping him in the ballgame, then he's going to get more minutes. TJ Warren looked exhausted. Devin Booker looked tired. You know who actually looked good in this game, and this is the one we were looping around to, was Mikal Bridges. He played 36 minutes in this basketball game and had one of the best lines in fantasy despite a usage rate of 9. He took 4 shots and 3 free throws in 36 minutes. He played 33 minutes only in their triple overtime loss the night before, and it's sort of tough to know exactly what the plan is for Bridges going forward. He's in this constant everyday battle with Josh Jackson and Kelly Oubre Jr. for small forward minutes or backup shooting guard minutes. And so, to me, it looks like he's probably locked in somewhere around the 25-minute range. But when things break well for him, as in like this ball game when he was actually a strong positive force for the team, he could push that number up. And as he gets into that 30-minute range, well, then he has the, let's face it, he has the old man stat set where he needs to be out there. It's a low usage thing. The old man stat set is basically a low usage thing where he's probably going to take a few 3-pointers, which for some reason he didn't in this ball game in an odd twist. He's great with steals and blocks, and he's going to fall into some rebounds and assists just from being on the court for a while. He's not going to win you any scoring titles, not with Booker and Warren and Ayton around. But for Bridges, over his last 5 games now, he's sitting on 11 steals. That's pretty good. 11 steals and 5 blocks in that stretch. That's basically 2 and 1, effectively. So to me, he's worth a look, actually. I picked him up in a spot where I had somebody I could just dump. I had Mo Harkless on one kind of deep leaguey sort of team. It's a 12-teamer that has long benches, so it plays like a 13, maybe a 14. I thought, well, Mo Harkless, there's like an outside chance that something good happens there, and I'd rather have Bridges in that spot. D'Anthony Melton is absolutely a drop. He's not going to be playing enough or doing enough because he needs the ball. He's not that same kind of low-usage, high upside guy. Kelly Oubre is also still a hold. I think he's going to play more minutes than this most games. He was pooped after the night before. And Josh Jackson sucks, but as I've said before, he's probably fine in a points league situation. Brooklyn, nothing there, really. Kuric's had a nice ball game, but that's largely tied to Alan Crabb's absence, and he's not expected to be out that much longer. And we're also looking at Karis LeVert maybe back within a month. So, no, I'm not buying into any of these other guys. And then Rondé Ellis-Jefferson was terrible, like detrimental terrible. 1 for 3 shooting, 4 for 8 free throws, and 3 turnovers. One of the worst lines of the night. Charlotte lost in Boston. That was a blowout. It was 16 points, the final total, but it was much wider than that. And so as a result, you can throw a lot of this stuff out. Just dump it. Kemba was good, and then Willie Hernan-Gomez had a nice game off the bench in garbage time, largely. And so all my other guys stunk. Jeremy Lamb was not very good. Batum was terrible. Zeller was bad. Marvin was bad. And, of course, he didn't hit the Marvin threshold. Need to get to 30 minutes, Marv. This was 25 and change. That's not going to do it. And then Boston, they didn't need to play their guys all that much, so not a whole lot there. Chicago whomped Cleveland 112-92. This was actually a ball game through about 2.5 quarters, and then the Bulls just ran them. For the Cavs, it's still Larry Nance and nothing else right now. Tristan Thompson expected to be back in about a week, which is good news. They need him desperately. I think you'll still see a decent amount of Larry Nance even after Thompson returns, but when Kevin Love comes back in what we're going to tentatively call about 2 to 2.5 weeks, then things get rough for Nance. And people are asking in the Hoop Ball forums, well, what should I do here? Should I try to sell high? The answer is yes, but with the caveat that most people in your league that are paying attention know that Nance's value is heavily tied to the fact that there are 3 centers hurt for the Cavaliers. If you include John Henson in that mix, he's not coming back. And so they're not going to pay for Nance. What you ought to do with a guy like Nance is when you approach these trades, just be honest with the other person and say, look, he's going to take a little hit when Thompson comes back, but he's still going to play the 4 and back up 5, right? We saw that before. He was still worth using. He wasn't playing 33, 35 minutes a game. He was in that high 20s range, but he was still worth using when Thompson was the guy out there. He was playing. The guy in front of him was Sam Decker, and he's traded. He's been traded. So go to this person and say, look, you've probably got about 3 weeks of good value here from Larry Nance. You got about 1 week of great value and then another week and a half of solid value. Okay? So you got top 50 for a week here, or maybe longer. I don't know. Maybe Tristan Thompson gets worked back in slowly. Maybe you got top 50 for 2 weeks. That's a good case scenario. And then another week to 2 weeks of decent value. And then, there's a decent chance he fades after that. So what I'm going to do for you here, this is you being honest with other people in your league. What I'm going to do for you is I'm going to give you, here's a guy on my team that's ranked 55, and here's Larry Nance Jr., and all I ask from you is a guy ranked like 47. So you use Nance as a 1-round upgrade on some dude on your team. Use him as like a spit shine on one of your players. And I'm not going to give examples because you can find them. Just look through your league, look at the guys on your team, look at their season-long averages, find out where they are, and just go to somebody else and say, hey, here's the honest-to-God truth. Do you need to make up some games? Because here, roll 2 guys out there for the next month that are going to be solid, and let me take one of your guys back that's just going to be a hair better, than the top guy, the dude I'm sending away that's not Nance. And that's how you make a real 2-for-1. In general, you're not shooting the moon. You're shooting for a spit shine. Sacramento came back and beat New Orleans, so we didn't learn a whole lot in this game from a fantasy standpoint. Bielitsa still, he missed some shots in this game, but overall he's worth streaming while Bagley is out, which sounds like it'll be about another week and a half to 2 weeks. And then on the other side, it's the usual suspects, so we can probably just gloss over this game because I don't think we learned anything. Minnesota at Oklahoma City. Karl Anthony Towns found himself in foul trouble, but luckily for the Wolves, they have maybe the best backup center who never plays minutes in the NBA in Gorgui Dieng, who rolled in there. I mean, this is all it would take, guys. This is all it would take. The whole fantasy world has just been pleading to get Dieng minutes, and it's never going to happen. But 11 points, 3 boards, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 5 out of 6 shooting, and a 3-pointer in 21 minutes. And he had one of the best lines on the night in 21 minutes. But anyway, the actual fantasy stuff from this game, Rob Covington had 5 cash counters, so he's back to being fine. Tyus Jones filling in for Derrick Rose is a crazy low usage guy, and it sounds like Rose practiced in full today, and so I believe he's expected to play in Minnesota's next ball game. And then also Taj Gibson got the start, played 25 minutes to Dario Saric, 23 minutes, and that's looking more and more like a timeshare, but with the edge going to Gibson because he's the starter. And so if he's playing well, if a starter's playing well, it's awfully hard to give them fewer minutes. If the bench player's playing well, they're the one that has to sort of force into a bigger minute situation. So if anything, you're sitting on Gibson, but I think I can probably just go ahead and say it's okay to drop them both. Right? I don't think we need to sit on those guys anymore. Clippers went crazy in this ballgame and still lost. They shot 54% and lost because the Warriors just didn't turn the ball over. That's a rough one. Gilgeous-Alexander was terrible. 27 minutes, almost no usage. This is what happens now that the Clippers are healthy again. Lou Williams is getting all the usage off the bench. Avery Bradley and Patrick Beverley have decided that they do want to take just a couple of shots every ballgame, and so SGA is useless. And this actually, believe it or not, was not one of my fears about Gilgeous-Alexander. My fears were about his fantasy stat set because he wasn't getting any assists or threes. But if he's not getting any assists or threes and he's not playing or shooting or steals or blocks or all that, well, yeah, then he's probably droppable. To be fair, I never picked him up, but for those of you that did, I mean, you can't trot him out there right now. He's been awful. He's been horrendous. Okay, horrendous is an overstatement, but he's been not very good. There's been a couple of decent games mixed in, but there have been some massive duds as well, and this is rookie inconsistency stuff. So if you're willing to wait it out, I'm okay with that too, with the assumption that either Lou or Avery Bradley or Pat Beverley gets hurt again, and then that clears a little bit of an avenue. But again, he's a rookie, and so things happen. Dallas-Portland, not much here. I mean, we got one eye on Mo Harkless, and he was actually decent in this game. He had a big shot at the end of regulation. Didn't end up mattering. They needed overtime. But Harkless 13-4 with a steal and a 3-pointer. That's just not enough. Even in the quiet old man sense, you got to get up to 30 minutes. He needs the old man 30-minute barrier, and he didn't get there. So we'll keep an eye on him. He's outplaying Evan Turner these days, but that still wasn't enough. And this was in overtime. So you really know it wasn't going to be enough without it. And then Memphis and the Lakers, this was my favorite revenge game of the day. Lakers destroyed Memphis about 2 weeks ago in Memphis, and the Grizzlies were obviously well aware of that. And they came out with an extra little fire and played a strong fourth quarter. Garrett Temple had a big one. He's on one of his little heaters again. I got a question on Twitter about Temple versus some of the other old guys floating around out there. And it's going to be this back and forth where whichever old guy gets healthy, they're going to look like the dude for a week. But at the end of it all, what you're looking for is the balance. At the end, you want... Temple is like 5th on my rank of old guys because generally he doesn't rebound. He had 7 in this ballgame, but overall he doesn't grab many. The steals at 1.2 are solid, but the threes are not all that high. He's kind of like a 3-and-D guy, but without that much 3. Right? So he's sitting at number 108 on the season in 9-cat. Iman Shumpert is at 123 in 9-cat. If you compare all these guys, Marvin Williams is at 112, but obviously he's been a lot better than that lately. Al-Farouq Aminu's at 111. Danny Green is at 97. All of these guys are in that same area. PJ Tucker at 107. To me, Garrett Temple falls more towards the back end of that group. But obviously he's hot right now, so the number is actually getting pushed up a little bit. He's had about 4 solid games in a row after a long stretch of pretty quiet basketball. And that's the beauty of being one of these sort of quiet plodding types, is that at the end of it all, you don't have to worry about it very much. Right? But if you're looking for individual stats, Aminu's the guy you go to if you want more rebounds, and Danny Green's the guy you go to if you want a few more threes and blocks, and Tucker's the guy you go to if you want steals and rebounds, and Temple's the guy you go to if you want slightly better percentages from your 3-and-D guy. And this is just how you balance it. And every team needs the super low turnover guy that trots out there at the end of the roster. So fine. Long story short, I'm fine with it if you want to rotate between all of those old men based on who's hot right now. And right now it's Temple among the group. Although I also think PJ Tucker with Paul out is looking at a pretty good stretch as well. JaMychal Green got 22 minutes, which is probably the story. The 4 for 6 shooting and a couple of free throws is not. He had 2 threes, 2 steals, and a block. He's been teetering right on the edge of value, and with Jaren Jackson Jr. seeing more minutes in this game, he played better. Then that obviously adversely impacts JaMychal Green. Marc Gasol, 17, 9, and 8. He looks like he's shaken off some of that injury stuff, and so everything was right again with Memphis. And on the Lakers side, we're not chasing. Simple as that. Ivica Zubac has a couple of really good games under his belt. JaVale McGee, we find out, was actually pneumonia and not the flu. And so I'm sure he's targeting a return in the next ballgame. If it's not then I guess you could stream Zoo for one more. Although they're playing the Warriors, so that could get ugly. So maybe don't. I'm sure McGee would love to get back out there and play against his old buddies, but, it's pneumonia, so you can't screw around too much. Is that a busy enough Sunday for you guys? Goodness gracious. There were 10, by the way, revenge games on that Sunday. They ended up going 6-4, which compared to how it had been going was actually kind of a letdown, but that's still winning. So it's tough to argue with that stuff. Back to Saturday, we already saw the Clippers. Denver lost in L.A. on Saturday morning, 132-111 final score. Nikola Jokic got ejected, and so you got more Jamal Murray and then some blowout time in the fourth quarter. Monty Morris has been playing well. I know I haven't really given him his dues on this podcast because, well, Isaiah Thomas, Will Barton, Gary Harris are not all that far away, but if you really want to stream him, a nice efficiency guy who never turns the ball over and gets you some assists, fine. I'm fine with it. Phoenix, Washington, this was the triple overtime game. Thomas Bryant went crazy. Bradley Beal went crazy. Jeff Green had big numbers. Satoransky played well. Tough to analyze what's going on there, but it does seem like they're trying to get Markieff Morris back involved. He just happened to foul out of this game. Keep an eye on Washington. And when I say one eye, keep both eyes on Washington. I don't think Thomas Bryant sticks in 12-team formats, despite going a perfect 14 for 14 in this ball game. Bradley Beal obviously is in. Satoransky only when John Wall is out. That was a pretty clear-cut winner in this scenario. Trevor Ariza played 54 minutes in this game. Markieff Morris, Jeff Green, that grouping, Otto Porter, who's still out, that grouping of guys is the one that I want to try to figure out. Is somebody going to rise above the group? And if so, they might be available in your league. Toronto, Philadelphia, this was a blowout. Philly on a revenge game. They got it. Nothing really to take away from this one, I don't think. We saw Kyle Lowry come back. He wanted to play in his hometown. Ibaka, Kawhi, both expected to be back very soon. This was a back-to-back. Oh, by the way, reports coming out that Leonard is going to play in back-to-backs after the new year. So if you were panicking on him and we said don't because he's awesome, well, this looks like you might get a nice little reward. Otherwise, yeah, you just roll along. Danny Green had a rough shooting game. You know he'll have his hot one coming up. He'll have 2 good games in a row, and he'll jump from number 95 to 80 or 75. That's just how it works for these old man types. And he would have played 32 minutes again if not for the blowout loss. You have to like the opportunity. That's really what it comes down to. We already saw Miami, Milwaukee. This was a back-to-back after a win in Boston, but luckily they're a team that sort of doesn't register from the fantasy standpoint because nothing changes for them, and so we'll just leave that one alone. And for Miami, this was the other good game for James Johnson, and hence another relatively quiet one for Kelly Olynyk. Situation to keep an eye on. Houston beat San Antonio thanks to, James Harden. Clint Capella had a 20-20 game. PJ Tucker had 16 rebounds. Gerald Green had 5 3-pointers. Told you to keep an eye on him if you need threes. I like the 14 shots, but they did just sign Austin Rivers, and he's probably going to come in and play 20-some-odd minutes. No, I'm not adding him while we all wait on Chris Paul, but what he does do is render Gerald Green less useful and also render Eric Gordon a little bit less useful. So that's kind of crummy. What do we miss? Utah. Hey, this is a home game, so you probably played Joe Ingles because we've been talking about the home-road splits, but he actually had a good game on the road before that as well. So I think it's time to get Ingles in your lineup. It seems like he's warming up, especially when Utah is playing games at home. If you'd like to bench him on the road, that's fine. He's been awful away from altitude. It's a strange phenomenon, I know. And I believe their game on Christmas is a road game. I'm trying to remember exactly where they're going. I think Utah's playing tomorrow, aren't they? You can double check on that, I suppose. I believe Utah is going tomorrow, but I could be mistaken. So don't quote me on that. And that was the Jazz in a home ball game. Anything else that I'm missing here? That might be all of them. Did anybody not play over the weekend? There were so many stinking games. I can't imagine we missed anybody. Suppose it's possible. And if I did, sorry. But I think I got them all. I feel pretty confident that I got them all. This would be a good buy low time on Ingles, by the way. It looks like he's starting to figure it out. Utah also, by the way, starting to get it figured out a little bit. And now I'm concerned that I've lost my mind. Who's playing tomorrow? Yeah, Utah's playing. No, it's a home game. Sorry, it's a home game for Utah. They're hosting Portland. They just played in Portland like 4 days ago, and now they're hosting them, so you got some revenge games. I'll talk about that here just for a brief moment. We do actually have a couple of revenge games happening on Christmas tomorrow. The Rockets are on revenge against the Thunder. They're 0-1 against them this year. Philly is on revenge against Boston. I'm a little bit worried, though, with Al Horford coming back. He does change the dynamic for the Celtics. And the Blazers, who we just talked about, are that just played 4 days ago, and Utah beat the hell out of Portland. So I would certainly lean to the Blazers side in that ball game. So that's the gambling stuff for tomorrow. Let's talk to Jacob Bikshorn of blogabull.com. I know, as we mentioned, we recorded this interview before the Bobby Portis injury, but a lot of it's still relevant. We can segue into that right now. Listen, folks, if talking Bulls once is good, talking Bulls twice is doubly good, because there is, frankly, 2 times as many things to talk about as a lot of other teams in the NBA these days. Injuries, guys returning from injury, off-court drama, which frankly we don't care about as much as other shows might, because we're worried more about how many minutes somebody's going to play. Trade rumors. We got the whole schlemiel at this point, and I'm very grateful to our guest coming on today to give us a little bit more kind of pull back the curtain type of stuff on what's going on in Chicago. He is with @BullsBlogger. That's blogabull.com. Old Man Bikshorn. I'm so excited to see your Twitter handle. I mean, genuinely, thrilled at this. Your actual name is Jacob, but many of the listeners know I went by Old Man Besbris for a while. So, Jacob, thanks for coming on the pod.
Hey, thanks, Dan. It's nice to be with another self-described old man.
Well, you know what? As we said right before hitting record, sometimes it's better to lean into it, right?
Yeah, it's a way of life.
So what old man thing have you done today? I'll start the show by asking you that question. Anything special that you did, like yell at a kid on a skateboard, or yell at a cloud, or take a Centrum Silver? What's the soup du jour?
Man, today I did send some very grumpy emails to people. I was I was critical of somebody's punctuation, and I I'm having a tennis racket restrung. That's kind of like an old man thing.
That is outstanding. Again, he's Jacob Bikshorn, contributor at bloggable.com, at Old Man Bikshorn, Bikshorn, if you want to find him on Twitter. And of course, you'll be tagged on everything that goes out with this pod as well. So, the Bulls. The Bulls. It's been kind of an interesting stretch to start the year. We began the season knowing basically that Lauri Markkanen was going to miss some time. Chris Dunn and Bobby Portis got hurt within effectively their first week of playing. Most of these guys are back now, just in time for Zach LaVine to have this weird little ankle thing crop up, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But in terms of the guys coming back, that's, I think, where we'll start. We saw already Chris Dunn's minutes get ramped up quickly. Bobby Portis, it's been sometimes yes, sometimes no. What can we expect from these two guys as the season wears on, just in terms of what kind of a role will they have on this team? Let's start with Dunn, because to me it feels like his role is a little bit clearer than the other guys. He's basically just the point guard, right? Unless something crazy happens.
Not just the point guard. He's really the only point guard. I mean, save for a couple of hot shooting nights from Ryan Arcidiacono, there is really nobody else on the roster that can credibly claim to have any sort of skill at the point guard position. So Chris Dunn, by no means will a top-notch point guard, but just by virtue of there being no other real competition at the position, is going to see as much time as he can handle coming off the MCL injury.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I figured. Let's talk about some of the guys that are a little bit more, I don't want to say confusing, but maybe the roles are a little bit less clear, and that's basically the big men. So Bobby Portis was a name that I already mentioned, him coming back from injury. What is his role? Is it gunner off the bench? Is there a universe where he ends up playing starters minutes? What do we think the Bulls' plan is with him, especially now with Jabari Parker being effectively pushed out of the rotation entirely?
I think that he's definitely going to be getting as many shots up as he can. I mean, that's always been his MO since he came into the league. He's not shy to shoot the ball. And I think that with this team, with the lack of offensive creation, especially with LaVine missing some time now, there's going to be nobody telling Portis to kind of hold back a little bit. He's definitely not going to be starting, especially with Markkanen back. And he really is not capable of playing center for more than a couple minute stretches here and there. So I don't think that he's ever going to be somebody who you can consistently rely on to play 24, 25 minutes a night, because the Bulls have so much invested in Markkanen and really believe in him. But essentially with Jabari Parker sort of, being told, hey, you're just going to be a victory cigar, more or less, for the rest of the season. I expect Portis to get ample like 6-man type minutes and have a full green light to get shots up when he's on the court in that time.
That sounds pretty good. Is there? Do you think he could get up to like? I don't know. I try to in my mind visualize what a guy can do with the number of shots. You said he generally isn't a particularly shy guy on the court. Could he get up to 14 or 15 points? Could he get up to 8 or 9 rebounds a game, or is that asking a bit much?
I see him more as like a 12 and 7 kind of guy. He can be a little erratic. Last season, he actually was very good shooting the 3 ball, but I haven't seen it as much this year. I mean, he's only been back for a couple of weeks now. So I hope that he is comfortable stepping outside again and find some rhythm. But he's a good rebounder for his size. Like, he likes going after offensive rebounds, especially. I love those putback opportunities. On a good night, he can break 15, but I don't see him consistently hitting that number for a season average.
Lauri Markkanen, he's the golden boy, right? There's nothing that can stand in his way.
Absolutely not. I mean, he's just so versatile on offense. The way that he can move around the court, get up shots with nobody really being able to defend or to bother his 3-point shot. The percentages have been not awesome to start. Well, he's shooting 30. Sorry, he's gotten hot a little bit lately. He's shooting 36% from three, only 42% overall on the season. But the team is going to always be looking for him to get shots up, and they're going to be running a lot of the offense through him, just because they know that he really is the future on this team.
Okay, now I got to get into something that I admit I really don't have a clue on this one. This is where my knowledge kind of runs out, and that's Wendell Carter Jr. And there was a stretch when everybody was injured, and he just went absolutely nuts, like monster games, steals, blocks, points, rebounds. He went crazy for a couple of weeks there. I think he was averaging something like 15 and 9 with like 2 steals and 2 blocks a game. He was knocking down free throws. But it's easy to play free and easy when there's nobody coming for your minutes. The plan, I have to assume, is that he's supposed to be the long-term guy at either center or power forward, depending on where Markkanen ends up. But the minutes have bounced around a tiny bit lately since the Bulls have gotten healthy. What does Chicago want to do with Wendell Carter Jr., just in terms of his growth? Like, are they trying to feed him as many minutes as possible, or is this a scenario where you dial it back a little bit and say, listen, sometimes it's not always the best thing to go maximum minutes. Third option, he just picks up fouls too quickly.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with just being a young big man and getting into foul trouble. I think that the team would love for him to play as much as possible, but there is another factor in play here, and that is the introduction of Jim Boylen into the equation. Boylen clearly has this mandate from ownership and from the front office to institute a more hard-nosed style, defense first, really slow it down system. And so a guy like Boylen in his first head coaching opportunity is definitely a little more comfortable with Robin Lopez on the court. But I think that Carter is going forward going to be, as he gets a little more knowledgeable about how to stay out of foul trouble, is going to be a real asset in fantasy. Something that I really like about him is that he just displays excellent passing vision. A couple times a game, he'll set a screen and catch the ball on the roll at the foul line, and he'll make the quick read and throw the ball out to a shooter on the corner. Unfortunately, whoever he throws it to, typically on the Bulls, not the kind of guy who makes that shot. But for a guy his age and his level of experience to be able to make those passes, and really he's also able to kind of facilitate at the foul line and make those high-low passes, you're getting a guy who is going to shoot pretty efficiently. He's going to pick up a couple of assists. He's going to rebound well. He's going to block some shots. I mean, he's really the guy who's going to put up numbers across a whole box score.
So it sounds like the outlook for Junior, I don't WCJ. What's the preferred nickname at this point?
Just my beautiful son.
That sounds pretty good. So the outlook is extraordinarily positive, is the take I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, he's just from a defensive standpoint, a guy who knows where to stand, and I think he's going to quickly earn the trust of this coaching staff. Before Hoiberg was fired, there were stories about how Carter and Boylen had developed a strong working relationship when he was just an assistant coach. So I expect that Carter will pick things up quickly, and by the end of the season, be a guy who's more of a 30-minute a night guy. Where so far this season, he's been having a hard time getting past 25 minutes.
Jabari Parker, we talked just briefly here a moment ago about him basically just getting banished. Rumors circulating about a potential suitor maybe in Utah. I mean, obviously things can change between when you and I speak and when this goes out to the general public, but what have you heard so far in terms of potential suitors?
I haven't heard anything that I would consider legitimate. Whatever they do with him is going to be very interesting. My take is that this will become more of a financial play with whoever is trading with the Bulls than a basketball play. Because of Parker's contract, is a $20 million player option for next year. So a team that is looking to maybe lure a Kevin Durant or a top free agent and needs to get off some bad salary and maybe we'll send a draft pick back to Chicago, we'll make a trade that kind of a trade, and the Bulls, take on some bad money. But where he goes, I don't really know what winning team looks at Jabari Parker and says, that's the kind of guy we need. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting bought out wherever he goes.
Even despite the fact that there's a second year on the deal, right? Or was that an option?
It's just an option. So
okay.
there's no guaranteed money tied to it. If there is, it's like maybe $1 million.
All right, well that's not too bad then.
But somebody who is really not shy about getting them up and who has no competition at his position is Justin Holiday. So I expect that the Levine injury will just result in more shot attempts for Justin Holiday. Not my favorite guy to watch, but somebody who's actually been pretty good. I think he's around 37 or 38% from three this year, shooting about like 7 attempts a game. So a guy who, if he's not owned in your league, definitely go get him.
Yeah, he seems like a pretty good sort of glue guy for a team that obviously is sort of a little bit a ways from needing your standard glue guy, but with options like Dunn and Markkanen and Levine when healthy, it's kind of nice to have a guy who maybe doesn't necessarily need to have the ball in his hands to start an offensive set. I like Justin Holiday. I felt kind of bad when he got the 2-month shutdown treatment last year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he can definitely play. He's a guy who, you could see him get traded. I think he's in the last year of his deal. And so that's a guy that I think in a smaller role could be much more efficient and be that guy off the bench that could, hit a couple of shots. Obviously, if that were to happen, that would not be great to be a fantasy owner of his. But so long as he's on the Bulls, I mean, he's playing like I think 36, 37 minutes a game. I mean, their only other small forward on the roster is Chandler Hutchison, who is a rookie from Boise State and hasn't really earned the trust of the coaching staff yet. So there's nobody else who can play small forward. So Justin Holiday is he's going to get a lot of run.
Very good. Jacob, Old Man Bikshorn, thank you so much for the Bulls deep dive.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the time.
You can find Jacob on Twitter at Old Man Bikshorn. I'm not kidding, people. I actually found the other person with Old Man in his Twitter name. This is a magical day. At Old Man Bikshorn on Twitter. Contributor at Bulls Blogger on Twitter. It's blogabull.com. Jacob, one more time, thanks so much.
Thank you, Dan. Have a great day.
Old Man Bikshorn. I feel a little bit bad, if only because the time in between the recording and the airing of the interview we'll have to get him back on. That's the point of it all. We got to get him back on in the very near future, maybe not on Christmas, but in the very near future, just to fill in some of the gaps now since more injuries took place in Chicago. But the point of all of that I think you guys want to take away is that when healthy, Bobby Portis is going to have a decent enough role. Chris Dunn is just going to be rolling. Justin Holiday is rolling. Lauri Markkanen is rolling. Jabari Parker is in a real mess. They're shopping him hard, and it's not happening yet. Wendell Carter Jr. is, if anything, a buy low, or maybe you even hope somebody drops him if things get bad enough. And then Zach LaVine, who we now have some more information on, should be back in, it sounds like about 2.5 weeks or so. So hopefully not too horrendous. As I mentioned, we are going to have a brief show tomorrow. I'm betting a lot of you won't be tuning into it, so I will do a quick preview of the Christmas slate. I mentioned the revenge betting angle, so I'm probably going to be getting down on Portland. Philly, that one scares me a little bit, and then Houston, also a little bit terrifying. From a fantasy standpoint, Christmas Day is a little bit weird. You often see the teams on the road play with a different... It's a different focus. It's not always better or worse. It's just sort of different because they're kind of missing home. You know, the early guys like Milwaukee is on the road in New York. They'll actually be home in time to have Christmas with their family. A team like the Blazers, they're just gone. You know, the Lakers are in Golden State. I would assume they're going to fly there beforehand, but if they wanted to, that game's a 5:00 game Pacific time. They could have Christmas morning in Los Angeles and then fly up for the game. I doubt they will, but they could. Philly, Boston, I mean, do they get home in time? It's a weird day. It's a very weird day. Oklahoma City, I think they could probably get home in time to do Christmas in their own place. it's just a strange day because you never know which players are going to have the right things on their mind. It's usually kind of a clunky start to the day. The problem is, what happens is it becomes a really polarized day where you get some guys that are really focused and other guys that really aren't. You get games where there's either no defense or no shooting, and it's hard to know exactly which one you're going to get. But watch the games on Christmas morning in particular and say, okay, is this going to be a clunker or is this going to be a nobody plays defense game? It's one or the other. It's never just like a normal basketball game where both teams are trying and there's an average number of shots that go in the bucket. It's either nobody's guarding anyone, it's just turnovers and layups for a while, or people are guarding each other, but nobody can shoot because everybody's all fat and sassy on Christmas morning, and it's Clang City. The hope is that by the end of the game, everything will level off a little bit, but it is a strange day for basketball, by all accounts. I do love the fact that the games are spaced out so nicely. You get 5 games, and none of them is on at the same time. So you just sit back, relax, and watch basketball all freaking day. There's a half an hour layoff between the first and second games, and that's it. Otherwise, you're just rolling. Fantasy standpoint, we were talking about how things are weird. With New York, I think we've got stuff pretty well ironed out at this point. I think you're going to see fewer minutes for Tim Hardaway Jr. because of the plantar fasciitis stuff. They're just trying to keep him healthy, play through it, high 20s in minutes maybe instead of mid-30s. Oklahoma City, Houston, opportunity here to see Austin Rivers in his first game. I'm expecting 20-some-odd minutes and at the expense of Eric Gordon and Gerald Green. Philly, Boston, not much really to keep an eye on there. There was this hope that Robert Williams would be a thing. I don't think he's going to be a thing. Lakers, Warriors, nothing there. Portland, Utah, not much there either. From a fantasy standpoint, it's kind of a low on Christmas Day. These are not teams that have stuff shaken out. We'll obviously keep one eye on Mo Harkless in Portland. We're watching Ingles to see if he can sort of get fired up. This is a home game, so I'm trotting him out there for sure. And then, mentioned Houston earlier on as well. You just sort of see how the minutes shake out. But these are not teams that we've been keeping a close watch on. All right. I think that'll about do it for us here on Fantasy NBA today. Not a whole lot else going on. We got betting, we got fantasy, we got Jacob. The whole thing is ready to roll. Later on this week, we will have a DFS contest. It's going to be Friday instead of Wednesday, though. So keep an eye out for our segment with Micah Patre to get you settled on that. We will have a show with Brewski later this week as well, and then I'll probably do a mailbag show, just a quickie on Christmas Day. Watch my Twitter account if you want to know what's going on that front. At Dan Besbris, I am tweeting every thought I have right now. Gambling, fantasy, show stuff, whatever. It's all going out there. So follow me there. You'll get it. Again, Hoopball presentation here, Fantasy NBA Today, brought to you by Hawaiian Isles Coda Coffee Company. Merry Christmas, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.